Hi, I'm Todd Kelly from Kelly Racing and welcome to another episode of The Road to Mustang. I've got some pretty good news. We've finally got 3 of our 6 crankshafts here in our shop. They've finally arrived from the States. So it's not just a matter of pulling the crank out of the box and throwing it in the engine. This is the foundations of a really good engine build, getting all this stuff right. So once the crankshaft has arrived, first thing is to get it out and wash it. Most important part of the process is measuring everything and making sure it's exactly the way we ordered it, and setting the bearings and all the tolerances up for our particular engine. So you can see here we've got a Kelly Racing Ford crankshaft job sheet. So the guys go around and measure extremely accurately all the different directions across each journal, write it down, and then they do the exact same thing with our engine block. So all the caps go on, they get torqued up to the exact torque that we use when we assemble the engine, measure all of those, and then work out exactly what bearings we need to install. So we use ACL race bearings, extremely high quality, world-renowned race bearings. And the good part about these guys is they're actually an Australian company based in Tasmania. So we've used ACL for as long as we've been racing cars, basically. So you can see on the box there's a 001, so there's all different tolerances in bearing. So once we've measured the crank, measured the block, we then choose exactly what tolerance we need to get all of those clearances spot on. Once that's done, we still can't go and bolt the engine together. We then need to confirm that the crank is balanced correctly to our rod and piston weight. So when we ordered the crank, and the crank is actually the first thing we did when we decided we were going to have a crack at building Mustangs in such a short lead time, the first priority was to get this crankshaft ordered, because it takes a long time to make the crank compared to the other items. At that point, we hadn't designed our piston or conrod, so the weights that we had for the piston and conrod were quite accurate assumptions, I guess. So this crankshaft has been made to a piston and rod that didn't exist. Now that the actual pistons and conrods are sitting here on the bench, we can go and check that the balance is perfect on this crank. So the way they balance a crankshaft, you can see these tiny little circles all through the counterweights in the crankshaft. So you bore out the hole and press this metal in, and that's what we call Mallory metal. It's actually tungsten, so the metal that goes in that hole, the Mallory metal, weighs about twice as much as the metal that came out of that hole. So that's been done to the original specifications. We've weighed it all now, and if there's any little fine tuning, it should be pretty right. It's only maybe just a small linish on the counterweight to balance it up. So this has all ended up basically spot on. We've actually got a crankshaft in an engine here. The guys have done some pretty serious hours over the last few days and nights to get to this point. We've got the inlet manifold getting assembled, water pump is getting assembled, and we're probably a day or two from getting this thing on the dyno. So it's taken a lot of time. It's taken probably a few days more than what we expected and planned, just through the sheer volume of parts to pre-fit and tidying up little bits and pieces. But we're close to getting it on the dyno and finally on the road to having a car on the track. So stay tuned. We'll have this thing together in a few days and be back on the dyno.
Hi guys, my name's Raymond. I'm the number 2 on Andre's Mustang V8 Supercar. As you can see, we're a couple of weeks into the build. We've got the body panels where they need to be. We're just trying to drill some stuff so we can get them all lined up. They'll come off and get painted, sorting out wing positions in the back. This on here to work out roof heights. The inside's starting to come together. We've got steering, pedal box, just putting the seat in at the moment. Soon we'll get a wiring loom and then we can start throwing a lot more in. So we had Andre in here yesterday, did a seat fit and just organised where he wants the steering column. So now that that's all done, we can go ahead and throw in some air tubing, tidy up the inside, get ready for a wiring loom. Just make sure everything's in position, ready for him. As you can see, all the panels have come off the car to go get painted. They've all been pre-fitted, so when they get back, they're ready to go back on. While that was away, the wiring loom's gone in, so we can organise that and get that all sorted out, make sure everything's good there. We've also put the fuel tank and the trans coolers in. The parcel shelf has gone in. Progress has been good, just fitting all the little panels that we already got back from paint, just to help the body kit fit properly, and finish off the wiring loom. So this afternoon, just going to be working on the wiring loom. Got the zip ties here. We've got everything where it needs to go. We just got to get it up out of the way so it's not at the driver's feet or anywhere near the steering wheel.
A pretty special moment's about to happen here, the birth of our very own Kelly Racing Ford engine. It was only around 15 weeks ago that we announced that we were going across to Ford. None of this stuff existed, so in 15 short weeks, including having the Christmas period in the middle of that, we've designed all of these parts, sourced all of the internals, the crankshafts, the block, the cylinder heads, and developed our own engine. So 15 weeks from an idea to having this thing about to come to life. And that is a really big task, because this engine has been in our category for around 15 years, not 15 weeks, 15 years. So the other Ford teams have had a constant R&D development run through that period of 15 years that we need to try and do in a very short period of time. So we've had that test engine on the dyno and done a huge amount of work in that time frame. And once we got it off and got back to work, we actually went and really interrogated all of the data and compared it against our previous engines and our existing knowledge. And we actually just 2 weeks ago decided we needed to have one last crack at a new manifold. So the machine shop's been running pretty much 24/7, and we've got this manifold, which is what we've ended up with on our test engine, and then we've only just finished another brand new manifold to test. So our plan is to fire this up, hopefully it goes, test the manifold, all of the exhaust stuff's now done and locked away, change the manifold over, and we've got to get this thing back off the dyno and straight up to Supercars now so we can get it homologated in time for our first outing. And the first thing is now, before we fire it, the guys Tone and Kai have got oil pressure, the water's been bled, we've got fuel up to the engine. We've just made this wiring loom in-house, and before we can fire it, we've bench tested all of this stuff back in the shop, but you normally do a few things to make sure it's actually spot on the engine. So we do an injector test, make sure the injectors are firing correctly, all the coils are firing correctly, and as you can see, all of the boots that seal up all of these connectors aren't yet heated on. So if there are any little mistakes or issues in the wiring, we've still got access. Once we've done that, run the engine, all of these get sealed on, and then the loom's locked away, ready to go in the car. So let's do this. So hopefully number one injector will fire. So number one injector works. That means one of these wires in here is correct, so it's looking good. go. What a successful day and a huge achievement for everyone in Cali Racing that's been involved in this project. We've pushed everyone extremely hard to perform what is almost a miracle to get this thing designed, developed to a certain point and faultlessly running on the dyno now. It's been run in for an hour. We've done a full day's worth of testing on the engine and it really couldn't have gone better. We won't know exactly where we end up power-wise until we go on to Supercar's dyno where all the other teams' engines have been tested, but it's certainly looking quite good. I'm sure there's going to be some R&D to pick up on that 15 years of R&D that we've not been able to achieve with this engine, but all in all, what an amazing job by the team, and I can't wait to hear this thing go past on the track. As you can see, we're back here at the workshop. This engine was on the dyno yesterday. We got it off the dyno and in the car late yesterday afternoon, and it has to be packaged up and sent to Supercar's dyno this afternoon. So we've only had really late last night and early this morning, some of the guys have been here pretty much all night trying to get all of the things done before we lose the engine, like the water pipe. So all of the water pipes and the cooling system has all been CAD drawn. All of the pipes have been bent, but you actually need to have everything in place to final fit them and cut them to fit perfectly in the car. So the cooling system, all of the oil lines are getting finalised now, the exhaust system. So the guys are really pushing it here, and the guys in the engine shop are really pushing these guys to get this engine back so they can package it up to send. So really starting to push it here. Everyone's working extremely hard. The time pressure's really built up on us to get all these jobs done. The other two engines are only long motors at the moment, so they're not at a point where we can install them in the car and do all this kind of work. We still only have the one complete engine, so busy. Hopefully we don't miss the truck to Queensland and we can get this thing homologated. Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. The next episode will have this baby coming to life.